There's nothing like it at all. Hey everyone, it's Kristen. Welcome to my channel where I sit down with you every week and share what I've been making. Primarily it's knitting. We do a lot of sewing here, a lot of quilting. I dive down many rabbit holes here on this channel. So if that is your jam, you are in the right place. Gather around, grab a cup of something because we're gonna get into things. And as you can see, I'm wearing a finished object. My Nightingale is finished. Huzzah, finally, it is off the needles. I will get into that in just a second, but what else am I planning on talking about? Yes, there will be quilting talk today. So 2 FOs that I'm very excited to share with you. It's a jam-packed episode. I will get into all of it in just a second, but I do want to mention that I didn't upload an episode last week. The plan was, I mentioned that I had planned to shoot a demonstration or tutorial of how I go about, how I went about setting in the sleeves of my Nightingale pullover and doing all the side seams, because this whole project was knit in pieces. Something that I believe this was my very first project that I've knit in pieces, and a few of you had requested that I do a video showing how I went about doing it. So I had the whole studio set up, my whole craft room. I had camera A, I had camera B, with an overhead shot. I brought out the big guns, guys, and I recorded the whole thing, and then I realized that the shot with the most meat, the most information, was useless because the way I had my microphone on me, it just, all the audio was getting muffled, and yeah, I was kicking myself, and I tried to save it by doing a voiceover, but the whole thing was just unsalvageable, so I decided to scrap it. Sometimes videos that I had planned don't exactly work out the way I want them to. Sometimes things go awry, and you know, what can you do? But at the same time, I hope, you know, this video will suffice and you'll still get something out of it. I think that's all for announcements. Let's get into the nitty-gritty of things. Marga the mannequin. Ooh. She's on the other side this week. I don't know if you can tell, I rotated things around. Yeah, my KALLAX. This is a new feature in my craft room. I needed some extra storage for all my bits and bobs, and this thing is, oh my gosh, guys, I love it so much. I'll pop some B-roll of it here, but I added some cabinets and some drawers just to kind of hide away things that I need close by but out of sight. And yeah, I swapped Marga the mannequin. She's no longer over here. She's over there now. So gotta get used to that. But this week, Margot is wearing my Calla shawl, a pattern by Natasja Hornby. And the yarn is La Mana Como, which is a delicious 100% merino wool. It's a heather gray, and I purchased this from Web, I want to say last year. I actually knit this, I gotta stop doing that. So used to it. I knit this shawl last year, I want to say around the same time. Yeah, I finished it when we were still in our Brooklyn place. It's funny, I loved knitting this shawl, I love the way it looks, but I have not been getting much wear out of it, and that's a shame because it is absolutely beautiful. The yarn is, again, as I mentioned, it's delicious. It's so soft and very, very next to skin. I actually just pulled it out of a giant bag, you know, storage bag that we took with us when we moved. I just piled all of my finished objects, all of my knitwear into this giant thing, and I just did a little rummage through it and I found it. So I'm gonna leave it out because I do want to give it some love. It was a really lovely pattern to knit, and again, I was knitting it around the same time that we were preparing to move, getting ready to move. I forget, the days just blend together, but it was one of those very meditative, relaxing, therapeutic knits that I just plowed through. It did require a lot of attention because, as you can see, there's some cabling action happening in there. There are charts that you have to follow, so it's certainly not one of those autopilot knits, not in the very least. Maybe in the beginning, because it is a triangular shawl and it has like this really pretty waffle stitch going on, and then it goes into the calla lily lace / cable designs. And anyway, it's such a clever design. It's so beautiful. It was featured in, again, another Lina magazine. I'm blanking on the issue, but I'll pop all that information in the down bar in the description down below. But as soon as I flipped to that page and saw it for the first time, I was like, that's going on my Ravelry queue. I'm going to be knitting that. I just had to make it. I had to have it in my wardrobe, and now I do. And it's a shame that it's not getting anywhere. So I'm definitely going to remedy that this year. It's going to get lots of love from me, and I'm looking forward to that. So that's what Margot is wearing this week, and let's move on to what I'm wearing this week, shall we? My Nightingale pullover. She is done. She is finished, and holy cow, guys, what an adventure this was. The Nightingale pullover, just to regale you, is a pattern by Norah Gaughan. It was featured in Pom Pom Quarterly issue number 27. It is such a beautiful issue, and as again, another pattern where as soon as I saw it, I was like, I need that in my wardrobe. I need it. I have to have it. I want to say I cast the sweater on well over 2 years ago, and for whatever reason, like I knit the back portion, I knit half of the front, and after that, I just let it fall to the wayside. I have no idea why. If I had to guess why I let it fall to the wayside, I would say it's probably because I got distracted by something new and shiny, another project, or B, number two, I was probably in a time where I was craving something autopilot. I just didn't want to have to focus on a pattern. I just wanted to cast on something and go. Either way, sadly, I abandoned this project for quite some time until a couple weeks ago, I published a video sharing all of my unfinished objects. I pulled everything out of the woodworks, all my UFOs, and did a whole audit. And this was one of the projects that I pulled out. And I was like, I really just have to finish it. It's a shame. And here we are. We have a finished Nightingale, and I could not be happier. I'm so glad I finished it, and thank you so much to everybody for all your encouragement and egging on, saying you can do it. Oh, I did it, and I will stand up. So here she is. Oh, I mean, Norah Gaughan. Can we just take a moment and admire Norah Gaughan's genius? Because holy cow. I'll turn around so you can see the back. So the back is similar to the front, only that the neck, I don't know how you can see, the neck curves up just a little bit more. Whereas in the front, it cuts off a little earlier. So it has like a dip, and then it has a really beautiful picot neckline right here. I mean, every detail in this sweater is just, yeah, Norah Gaughan. I'll say it again, Norah Gaughan, she is a genius. So yeah, let me see. Where do I begin? The yarn is by Quince & Co. It's their Lark base, which is 100% American wool in their damson colorway. So it's this glorious, moody, I want to say purplish gray. And yeah, dare I say it's on the spectrum of mauve. It's always on the spectrum of mauve, am I right? But yeah, for the most part, it is a deep, warm, purplish gray, and I absolutely love it. It is worsted weight, so, even though I guess the silver lining of knitting all these details into a sweater, at least there's worsted weight. The worsted weight helps it knit up a lot faster than if it were fingering weight or lace. I mean, my goodness, can you imagine if this was all lace? I mean, would just be crazy sauce. So I knit the back, I knit the front, I knit 2 sleeves, and had to graft everything together. And this was the video that I was planning to make, and it just didn't pan out. But the way that I grafted all the pieces together was using the mattress stitch, which is a very common technique used to seam sweaters together. And the cool thing about the mattress stitch is that it makes seams seemingly seamless. Pun totally intended. I mean, of course. But I'll stand up so you can see. So here we have the ribbing, and then you can still see it, but it's very, very faint. It's a faint seam line right here. I'm not gonna lie, my edges didn't line up. Some were kind of wonky or whatever, but I did fudge some stitches. But honestly, who's looking at your armpit? Who's looking there? Honestly, if you're looking at my armpit, you're too close. Get away. Anyway, the mattress stitch worked out great. It was very easy, straightforward for under the sleeves, for seaming the sleeves together and joining the sides. Where it gets a little tricky is when you're setting in the sleeves. So yeah, as you can imagine, you can see here, there's a lot of gathering happening at the shoulders right here. And then you have a lot of shaping happening at the armholes, and you really just kind of have to finagle it. I mean, that's the best way I could describe it. I know that's not the answer you want to hear. I know that's not an expert answer, and I am by no means an expert when it comes to seaming things. Again, this was my first rodeo seaming things together. So I'm learning. I've learned a lot through seaming this sweater and just knitting this sweater in general. That goes without saying. So when it came to setting in the sleeves, you know, again, I'm not gonna lie, there was a lot of ripping back and forth, like ripping things out. I think it took me about maybe 8 tries to finally get it down as to how I needed to go about seaming these sleeves together. So I'll try and pop some B-roll here showing you how I did it. We're gonna start right here on the left side of the shoulder seam, and same thing, like we have this very tight knit selvage right here, and we're just gonna take our darning needle and go into that ditch right at the beginning of that seam and pick up those 2 stitches. Let's see, those 2 bars that lie in between the selvage and this next stitch over. So let's see, there we go, there it is. And then we're just gonna pull that through. And again, you just want to pull out a nice length of thread, again, not too long. And then going from the center of the top of the sleeve, this, you may have to eyeball it, and that's okay. So I'm just gonna guesstimate that this is the center right here. So right here we have the selvage, and right below that are 2 legs of this row of stitches right here. So we're gonna go right into those 2 legs. So instead of going into a ditch, we're going right into live stitches. So trust me, this will all work out. And that looks like it's the center. Maybe not. Maybe I'll go back one or 2 stitches. Yeah, okay, this one looks like it's more smack dab in the middle right there. Now we're gonna go back to the other side, back to our shoulder seam, and then continue on, just going into the ditch, pulling up these 2 little legs, and pulling it out like so. And then go across the aisle, find our next selvage, and find those 2 legs of the live stitches right here, and go in and out. Go across the aisle again, find our 2 legs in the ditch. Sounds so gruesome. There are 2 legs in the ditch. You want to excavate those 2 legs and go through them with your yarn, pull it through, go back across the aisle again, and yeah. This one, do go slowly because it can get a little tricky. And again, don't be afraid to pull out your stitches if it looks a little wonky. At the end of the day, you're burying this selvage stitch on the wrong side. And there we go. So here we have that tightly woven selvage right there. And then we're going into the ditch. And because you have a lot of increases and decreases happening along the shaping, the arm shaping, or the shaping of the armhole, where's Kristen? Again, you know, just use good judgment. Find the ditch closest to the selvage, closest to the edge of the armhole, if that makes sense. So yeah, here's those 2 legs. And it's okay if you have to fudge it, like 1 or 2 stitches that are kind of, you know, just squeaked together. It's not the end of the world. Like here, it's a little murky, kind of hard to find the legs, but we're finding them. Even if you have to make up a leg or just 1 leg, that's completely fine as well. But yeah, we're just going to continue on going around. Now we're entering some tricky territory because we're no longer in stockinette land. We are now in twisted rib land. So when that happens, we're just gonna, you know, go into that twisted rib. You can skip over the purl ditch if you want and go up in here. It's all about, honestly, I mean, you can do this by the book or you can just eyeball it, honestly. Like even if you do go into this this purl stitch right there, you can go in a ditch, find these 2 little legs right here and just go in through there. It's gonna look fine. And then here we go. Found 2 little legs, go in. And you'll notice along the armhole on the sleeve, you're eventually gonna end up with some rows going parallel again, and that's when you can go back into, you don't have to pick up stitches, live stitches. You can go back into your stitch picking up mode. Is this terminology making any sense? Because I'm just making it up at the top of my head. Yeah, lots of ditch diving, digging, and excavating yarn legs. I mean, I'm gonna do a crap job explaining this, but when you have two seams, like here's one seam and here's another, and they're right next to each other, if you have a row of stitches going up and down vertically next to stitches going this way horizontally, and you're met with knit stitches and purl stitches. When you're met with those horizontal stitches, you want to take your darning needle and go under the two visible legs that are there. And when you're met with the vertical stitches, you want to go into the ditch between the two visible stitches. There are two strands of yarn that you go in and pick up between the two rows of stitches. So you're going in and getting those stitches that way. And again, it's really just trial and error. I'll try and insert some B-roll here to try and better explain it. But that's how I went about doing it, and just kind of, going along, taking my time, being very patient with myself. And finally I got the gist of it, of what I was supposed to do, and it all came together. Although one of these sleeves, I think it's this one, if you can see right here, this one is nicely set in. It looks very even, and everything's where it should be. Whereas with this sleeve, I feel like the gathers are too set back this way, so I may go back and unpick it and reset in this sleeve. Although looking straightforward, it doesn't really matter. I mean, I could leave it like this and just be happy, but the OCD in me will come back to haunt me, and yeah. So I think at some point I'm going to revisit this, unpick it. Not immediately. I'm going to take a little break for now, finish some things, and then come back to it and reset in the sleeve. For the neckline, I did make a slight modification. The original pattern said to pick up, what was it, 90 or 92 stitches around the neckline, and I started to do that, and I got maybe over here or whatever, and realized that I was gonna have way more stitches than 92 stitches. Somehow my stitch count got messed up, or honestly, I didn't question it. I just ripped back, and instead of picking up every single stitch along the selvage line, I went in and picked up every other stitch along the selvage line, and ended up with about, I want to say 62 stitches. I think it was 62 stitches anyway. And that worked out really nicely, because I like the narrow neckline. I mean, it looks very elegant, whereas I think if I had 90 stitches, it would just be, I don't know, I feel like it would be too wide. And yeah, I love the way that this looks. So that worked out really well. The only caveat to that is that because I have less stitches, it's a more narrow neckline. This is a little hard to get over my head. I mean, I can still get it over my head. I just have to struggle just a little bit. And I knew that might be an issue going into it. So when I bound off on the wrong side, I used Jenny's surprisingly stretchy bind off to do that. And I think that really helps, because, even though it's narrow, it still has a little give to it. And so that worked out really well as well. And then last but not least, I mentioned when I picked this back up again, I mentioned that I made a mistake on the shoulders over here, which is probably why my stitch count got messed up over here. Anyway, I think it worked out pretty well, but right here, these stitches, they're just supposed to be stockinette. They're not supposed to be ribbing. But when I realized I made that mistake, if you can imagine, I picked up this project when I was about here on the front, and then I knit all the way up, I knit all that, and then realized I made a mistake. In order for me to fix it, I would have had to rip all the way back and remedy it, but I wasn't about to do that. I even put it out to you guys. I was like, what do you think I should do? And many of you were like, don't bother ripping back. Please don't rip back. And I'm so glad I didn't, because honestly, I like the ribbing. I think it adds a nice element. I think if it was just all stockinette right there, it would feel a little too bulky for me. So I think that worked out nicely, and thank you so much for your input. Very much appreciated. I think if I ripped back, I would have just lost it at some point. But anyway, we did it. We persevered, and we now have this gorgeous, beautiful Nightingale sweater that I am going to love to death. And yeah, she's done, my friends. And dare I say, I'm so tempted. Knowing what I know now, it's almost like this was a muslin, and I'm very tempted to knit another. I don't know. I know. Am I just a glutton for punishment? But yeah, it would be really nice to have another version of it in something similar to Andrea's from the Fruity Knitting podcast. I mean, her version is absolutely stunning, and I think I mentioned this on another episode, but I wanted to knit the pattern when I saw it in Pom Pom magazine initially, but when I saw Andrea's, I was just sold on the whole idea altogether, and she completely inspired me to cast this on to begin with. So, Andrea, if you're watching, thank you so much. And I also want to say that last week I mentioned that she has a tutorial for setting in sleeves. I lied. I'm sorry. I made a mistake because it's been so long since I watched it. I went back and rewatched that episode. She actually shows you how to finish the sleeve cap and do the neckline. So again, very, very informative, very helpful. I kept referring back to it while I was doing the neckline and the sleeves. But unfortunately, I was incorrect in saying that she had a tutorial on how to, you know, set in the sleeves and, you know, seam things. My memory, guys, it's going. But anyway, trying to think, is there anything else that I want to say about this beautiful sweater? I believe that's it. And I don't know, guys, can you hear a crackling noise in the background? I got this candle from Target a couple weeks ago, and it's one of those candles with the wooden wicks, and I've never purchased a candle with a wooden wick before. And I didn't realize that wooden wick candles, they crackle. They make this crackling fireplace noise. And it's really nice, but I realize it might be affecting the microphone. I'll find out while I'm editing this video, but you know, I hope it's not too distracting. I hope it's more cozy-like instead. But anyway, moving along, now that this is finished, I went ahead and picked up my Travel Mode 2.0 shawl again and ran into a little snafu. Well, when I last shared it with you, I realized I had made a mistake. Found out it was my stitch count, and I ended up ripping all the way back to the midsection right here. We're getting some late day sun, so that's why you're seeing all these sunspots right here. But anyway, you know, just going with it. But this is the Fence colorway that I'm using by Wobble Gobble Yarns. And this colorway and the Succulents colorway, I'm holding together with a strand of mohair in the, what is it, Ito Sensei Goat, which is leftover yarn from my ranunculus pullover. I had an extra skein of that left over and decided to, you know, work it into this shawl. However, I ran out, and I'm not about to go out and buy another skein of that just because I really wanted this to be kind of a stash busting project, so that would kind of defeat the whole purpose. So I have to go stash diving once again, see if I can find some grayish mohair. I'm pretty sure I have some in my personal stash, or, you know, worst case scenario, I might just dye up some more mohair for myself. But it is, the colorway that I would use is the, what is it, the Weep colorway, which is this one right here. So it'd be just a gray. I think it'll work out really nicely. But yeah, so ooh, I'm getting mohair all in my coffee. I'm gonna put that over there. Again, this pattern is by Susanne Sommer. She is easily one of my favorite designers. She's so clever. Like, clearly I'm jealous of her math abilities because I cannot math. I'm terrible at math. I hate math. I admire anyone who can math, especially the way Susanne Sommer can math. I mean, she's just, yeah, another genius in the knitting world that, you know, I admire. All right, I stopped down my camera lens just to counteract the late day. Wow, this is, yeah, that's what I get for recording in late day sun. But anyway, yes, what was I saying? Travel Mode 2.0. The knit along happening over in our private Facebook group is coming to an end on November 31st. So still plenty of time to join. If you remember, there is going to be a giveaway prize, and that will be 4 skeins of Voolenvine yarns in a colorway of your choosing. So an SQ's worth, give or take. And yeah, very, very, very excited for that. All right, moving along, guys. Drum roll. I mean, I am so excited about this because it's been a long time coming. It feels like forever, but my Peacock Quilt is finished. I'm so excited. Just a little context. So I want to say about 10 weeks ago, I finished sewing the quilt top, or finished piecing together the quilt top of my Peacock Quilt, and I decided to send it out to have it long-armed. And if you're not familiar with what that is, when you send a quilt out to be long-armed, you're sending it out to somebody who has a giant sewing machine with a long arm, big enough to accommodate a quilt. I mean, a full-size blanket quilt. It's a giant frame that a quilt can rest on, and it's a computerized machine that basically quilts together your quilt backing, your batting, and the quilt top, and makes it all pretty using a a pattern that kind of correlates with the quilt top, the design that you have going on. I probably could have quilted it on my tiny home machine, but I was just like, you know what? This is a very special quilt, and I really just want to have someone professional do it. And so I sent it out to Missouri Star Quilt Company because they have a very well-known quilting service, a long arm quilting service there. So, you know, I went with that and sent it out, and holy cow, guys, 10 weeks later, I want to say more than that. I think it was 12 weeks, but anyway, it's funny because it's sitting in my lap right now, and because it's metallic, the light is bouncing off and it looks like it's glowing. I mean, it's magnificent. But anyway, I'll shut up now and show you what she looks like. Here she is. I'll stand up. There's no easy way to show this. It is so big. I want to say it's about 72 by 72 inches square, and Missouri Star, they went with this kind of loop-de-loo motif, and I think it lends itself so beautifully to the busyness that's happening in here. The peacocks, the irises, the florals, and the grunge. It just blends everything together, and it makes me so incredibly happy. And, you know, I'm not gonna lie, I was nervous about sending it out because I've never done it before, and, you know, it's a gamble, but at the same time, you know, I'm like, everyone knows Missouri Star Quilt Company, they have a good reputation, and I was like, I'm just putting my quilt in their hands and come what may. So, but I will say they had excellent customer service. You know, they give you plenty of room on their website to, you know, share your notes, you know, let them know what you want, what you don't want. And they did send me regular updates through email, letting me know, you know, where it was on the queue. And, you know, when it got to about 10 weeks, I did contact customer service. I was like, hey guys, just, you know, wanting to know where my quilt is. And they gave me the full lowdown, and it was great. It was a very smooth transaction, and I would totally do this again. I mean, in hindsight, I'm so glad that I did not tackle this on my home machine. I think I would have lost my marbles, to be quite frank. So, you know, would I send out another quilt? You know, it's an investment, you know, to be totally transparent. I think I paid somewhere around like $120 total to have this top quilted, but I think it was worth every penny. I think it saved me a lot of blood, sweat, and tears when it came to finishing this project. And the only thing left for me to do when it finally arrived, all I had to do was make and sew the binding. And you know what? It was so fun to do. Not many people like sewing binding, but I find it very, very relaxing and satisfying. I mean, guys, look at these mitered edges. I mean, they're just so neat. I'm getting better just through practice and sticking with it. I feel like I'm taking a break from quilting lately, but, you know, just getting this back and finishing it, it makes me want to quilt more, even more, you know? So I know I'm kind of on a garment sewing kick at the moment. I mean, surprise, where did that come from? Again, many, many rabbit holes here. So I'm going to ride that wave for a little bit. And then once that's out of my system, I'm going to definitely come back to some more quilting because I've got a lot of quilt tops on the go, you know, still some unfinished projects that need some love. But all that to say that, yeah, I was pleasantly surprised with how this turned out. Again, they did a beautiful job top stitching this, quilting. I love the motif that they chose. Again, like what do you call these? Like little loop-de-loos, meandering loops. I don't think they're bubbles. They're certainly not bubbles, but again, I think it's just such a nice pattern that complements whatever's happening here. And yeah, I would definitely do this again without hesitation. I should talk about the backing. I completely forgot about that. I don't know how well you can see it here, but it is this. It is a grunge fabric. It mimics the grunge fabric on here, like on the front. This is a cream gold metallic grunge fabric that, you know, blends everything together. And the only similar fabric that they had on the website for me to choose from was this just plain cream grunge. So it's, you know, very subtle, and again, I think it just complements the front really nicely. Oh, and I should also say, when it came to the binding, I did reference Missouri Star Quilt Company. Jenny has a video. I think it's called the Ultimate Binding Video. I'll link to it down below. But she has this great tutorial on how to create binding and sew it to your quilt. And yeah, every time I finish a quilt, which is not very often, but every time I do, I always reference this video, and it's just so handy. So again, I'll link to that down below. But she's got some really, really great tips for, you know, finishing and binding your quilts. So yeah. Oh, it's done, guys. It's done. What a labor of love. Gosh, I wish I had a better way of, you know, displaying my quilts. I know there are frames or like these wooden things that you can mount on the wall. It has like a little roller thing, and they're meant for displaying quilts. I think at some point maybe I'll invest in one of those. I think it would make a great backdrop for something. But anyway, again, thinking out loud, I'm sure eventually I'll invest in something like that. I think it would be great. I mean, the dream is to make a quilt that would look really nice on the wall, just like a wall hanging for our dining room or our living room. I mean, Dennis proposed the idea of using this one, but it's metallic and doesn't really go with our decor, and you know, I think it would clash with a lot of things. As much as I think it would look great, I'm just like, maybe I'll make another quilt and, you know, make something that will match our decor and just complement it a little better. But this one's special. I have other grand plans for it. I cannot tell you how rewarding this feels. I mean, I can't shut up about it. It's just, if you ever want to feel a sense of like true accomplishment, make yourself a quilt. There's nothing like it at all. All right, my friends, I'm gonna wrap things up. I mean, what is this? What is this happening down here? The sun is setting. I mean, daylight savings already happened here in the States. Is that a thing that's worldwide? I think it's just a thing with the States, daylight savings. I think it's just a US thing where we have daylight savings and we refuse to convert to the metric system. I don't understand. I think it would be so much easier if we could do away with daylight savings time and the metric system. I don't get it, guys. But yes, the sun is setting much earlier here in the Northern Hemisphere. It's getting darker a lot earlier, which, you know, is sad, but then it also means, you know, it is sweater weather, which I'm not complaining about. I'm going to end things there. Thank you so much, as always, for hanging out with me. If you're new here and haven't already, feel free to like and subscribe down below. I'm putting out videos for your viewing pleasure every week. And again, if you would like to support this channel and what I do here, you can do that by clicking the join button below and becoming a member. For the price of a fancy schmancy cup of coffee every month, you can enjoy some bonus content from yours truly. And that said, have an amazing weekend, and I will see you next time.